advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage your risk to recovery, and we have managed more than $1 billion in that recovery. We've also managed more than 1,000 policies and the placement of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of premium. Because we are insurance coverage experts, we understand what you need. So who better to help you in your recovery and placement of insurance than the team at GlobalPro? We've been doing it for 10 years. I mean, we've been counting down all of our success. If you've been tuning in, I hope you have been. These live segments give you a peek inside to look about what has made us successful. Also, a look at the market, the conditions. You as a business owner, community association manager, or board member can get a better understanding as to some of the things that you should be doing, some of the changes coming in the marketplace. We've had on industry experts from materials to contractors to engineers to lobbyists to politicians, you name it. We have those experts on here to talk about important issues that are impacting both your business and our community associations. Well, I've had an awesome opportunity to spend some time at the more recent Biz Now events. What a great organization. To Jordan and his whole team out there, you guys are doing an awesome thing by putting on these events. These are live events. People are showing up. They're taking the stage. There's panelists up there that are talking about really, really important issues. We had a series of them. We had the Miami State of the Market in September. We had the Palm Beach County State of the Market in early October. And just yesterday, we had the Biz Now Multifamily Annual Conference of South Florida. As you might imagine, yesterday's panel got a lot of attention. There's a big focus on multifamily. There's a huge discussion around rental rates and overdevelopment and issues. And just today, we had an announcement of yet another high-rise project squeezed into buildings in the Brickell area. We'll see what's going to happen with that. It's a massive project. I mean, the land alone sold for over $200 million. Waterfront project that's awesome. That's just going to be awesome, right? The downtown area, if you visited Miami, if you're from New York or from New Jersey or anywhere in the country, if you just missed a year, maybe a two because of the whole pandemic, and you come back, you've realized that there's more cranes up in the air. There's so much action going on, whether it's in downtown Miami, in Miami Beach area, all the way up the coast, Palm Beach. Palm Beach is growing like crazy. The state of the market, I was shocked to hear some of the numbers talk about just the energy and the decision making that is going into some of these businesses relocating from other areas that may not be so attractive, like California. How they're treating those dollars. Money likes money, so it's following its way and it's coming down here to South Florida. Huge tech up, right? There's a lot of interest in the tech industry. Hundreds of thousands of jobs are projected to be created in the South Florida market, which is going to lead to further development and changes, not only in the construction side, but obviously big focus of our show is on insurance, and what that means to these businesses and community associations is an important issue that we want to keep on hitting. But yesterday, when I was listening to the panels talk about the multifamily market from PMG, 13th floor, some big time developers that are making a huge mark in South Florida in this fast growing marketplace. They were covering a wide range of topics. I mean, everything from implementation of technology to what's attracting the actual tenants, to the costs associated with doing some of those things, and some reasons why you may want to leverage technology, some reasons why you wouldn't. There was a huge debate on stage. It was actually fascinating to watch, where you had kind of an old school thinking of keep it simple, stupid, versus on the other side, you had a real big push for technology. From an insurance perspective, technology is helpful and hurtful. Sometimes it goes to early warning systems, talks about energy usage. We talk about all these other things that technology can help. On the other side, how do we protect associations' data and information? And this world of cyber insurance is new. There's not many cases out there on it. The policies are kind of rudimentary or archaic in some regards. In fact, I was looking at one policy just recently. It still was talking about fax machines. I, quite frankly, haven't been in a community association management office in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that has a fax machine in it. Maybe there's some out there that still do. It seemed a little bit kind of out of place, if you will. But honestly, to me, it just shined a really big spotlight on the fact that, the technology is here. It's not going away. It's getting more complicated, and our policies seem to be kind of lingering behind. And perhaps the procedures of these insurance companies and the adoption of some of these changes is not happening quite as quickly as it should. In fact, what is it, 2-3 years ago? We didn't even know what InsurTech was. It wasn't even a word. It wasn't even a label. Now it's an entire industry. In fact, if you look at some of the numbers, and some people are reporting that it's quite frankly getting more attention by venture capitalists and investors than any other technology. What's that saying to us, right? So if our policies, though, are falling behind and not keeping up with the changes, although the money's following that opportunity and these technology being implemented in buildings, I wonder what it's going to mean for insurance in the future. I don't know, but GlobalPro is doing the research into those things. We want to stay ahead of these things. We want to stay ahead of the curve. So our team of attorneys and experts are in it. We're consulting right now, actually, with a team out of Silicon Valley, working with them closely to get a better understanding of some of the changes that they're forecasting, particularly for real estate and technology and how all that's going to implement, and ways in which we may be able to help or influence those that are looking at insurance or trying to protect these associations and these business owners from threats. I mean, if you just look at the numbers on the hacks and all this other stuff, it's mind-blowingly huge. And those are those that are getting reported. There's many other things that are getting unreported, and people are having to deal with it because they don't have insurance for it. They don't have coverage. They're not set up for it. I have been in particularly firsthand knowledge of situations where I literally saw a law firm go out of business because they did not protect their tech, their data and information. I've spoken to the administrative associations for law firms on issues of technologies and changes as we saw them 2 years, 3 years ago. Now, I've been interviewed by many different media outlets about these issues, but the reality of it is when I turn to the policies and I look at the investments in the insured technology, I mean, they're not even equal. They're on completely separate different pages. What we're talking about here is market changes. We're talking about things that are implemented. And another big change is something that we're in the wake of Champlain South Tower tragedy is we're seeing these committees being formed to address community association issues as it relates to 40-year recertification. And I just commented, I was on a panel earlier this week, and it was talking about hiring of contractors and everything else. And the one thing we need to take consideration is that while today we could talk about how you may hire or onboard those contractors to help you or professionals to help you, those things may change too as these things go through committee and legislation and these bills are turned into laws. If you don't know how that works, there's a great little cartoon. I think it's like a million years old. Go on YouTube, just check it out, and you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. But there's basically a proposed bill. The bill gets changed and things get added and taken away. Suddenly it becomes a law, and then we all have to deal with it. But what comes out of these committees is the proposed bill. What comes out of the bill and becomes the law is sometimes entirely different. So it's important to get involved earlier on in the conversations to kind of steer and direct that information. And there's been some people that have gotten involved heavy early on. The funny thing is that they were almost public enemy number one to forcing implementation and restrictions on these associations earlier. So now they're at the forefront of trying to enforce it when they were lobbying to remove it years ago or stop it from becoming law. So it's great to see that they're jumping on the bandwagon and getting involved and doing the right thing, truly the right thing. But, big conversation around, okay, how does this impact insurance? We saw insurance companies cancel policies. We saw insurance companies threaten non-renewals because of 40-year certification, compliance, and other issues. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they're going to develop these bills or the recommendations for the development of these bills, and then how these bills become laws and how those laws are interpreted by more attorneys, right? Attorneys on attorneys on attorneys, right? That's a lot of attorneys involved. There's also, you have city representatives, whether at various different levels, and I would say city and state and federal level, all involved in the conversation, whether it's commissioners to mayors to House state representatives, both on the state and federal level, all part of the conversation. They're all adding their influence because, again, it's great to have a law that requires you to do something, but you got to talk about the cost of monitoring and managing that whole program. and administering those things. But it's great to see that so many people, even those that lobbied against the things that might have helped avoid certain issues that for the associations as it relates to 40-year certifications and delinquency on these things, are now stepping up to the plate to make a positive change to implement these things. But from an insurance perspective, okay, let's consider it. Let's talk about it, because we used to get discounts for little like sensors for overflowing water. But now if I have an annual program to maintain my paint, my concrete, my roofs, and all those other things, hey, Mr. Insurance Companies, what are you going to do for me now? I have a perfectly well-maintained building for over a 40-year period of time. I had no major real structural issues. I have all these things. I can disclose it all. You used to give me discounts when I would engage a mitigation contractor. In the same regard, are you going to do that for me today? Because my insurance rates in South Florida are huge. They're high. They're out of control. The product they're selling is inferior. Or paying more money for it. There's things in there like arbitration clauses in New York for a Florida loss. There's all kinds of things that are getting inserted into this insurance that associations could possibly can't afford, and unfortunately, a lot of times they're taking the cheapest product, and that product is really not even cheap. It's expensive, and it's not doing them any favors or benefits. Now, I focus a lot of attention and a lot of discussion this morning on Florida, South Florida, things that are changing and happening there. But as you may know, we have launched an office in Texas, and to bring us our market update, I want to bring on a president of GlobalPro Texas, Mr. Bowlby. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Dan. Hello from the Lone Star State.
Yes, everything.
So I thought we'd talk a little bit about. We'd start talking a little bit about construction costs and end with another Florida-Texas partnership that's also talking about construction costs this morning. But first, this topic has been front of mind for me because as we've continued our conversation with a lot of the property management companies that we met last week, one of them brought up a really interesting point. He said, for us, the biggest issue in the claims process is even once we get, kind of the amount of recovery nailed down, we send the estimator out and kind of get all the construction costs nailed down. Just going through that whole delay, deny, defend process with the insurance companies, by the time we actually make the recovery and get it settled, our construction costs have increased another 20+%. So even though we get the recovery, we're still out of pocket about 20% on those construction costs. And I don't know if you guys are seeing a similar thing in Florida or not.
No, absolutely. Rob, when we had a moment to talk a little bit about this, off camera, and made me think about the period of time following a major event like a huge hailstorm or the freeze that you guys had in Texas, or any hurricane that's impacted the coastal areas, and how much the cost databases lag, right? It's like a 3 to 4 month period of time they lag after the major. Well, the situation we're in with potentially hyperinflation and there's this strain on the economy and the market, this isn't something that's 3 to 4 months, right? We're talking about, possibly years. I read with something that they're actually moving ships from California over to other ports, which these other ports may be further distances to the point of delivery for some of these materials and things like that, which is obviously going to lead to even more increased costs. Well, it may get there today or in a few days, but another thing that's just, how do you quantify that stuff right now? I think they're just trying to find a solution to the issue that are there. But absolutely seeing it, but I think it's a bigger picture right now. Is we're not even looking at a natural disaster. We're looking at an economic disaster that's impacting recoveries on claims. Rob, like in Texas, you have major industry. What are those, like petroleum with paint products and drywall and things that are manufactured right there, Louisiana, Texas area. What are people talking about as far as the supply chain issues that they're dealing with? You're bringing up cost, right? And a lot of the cost drivers has to do with the inability to get the material to the job soon enough, and then people are coming back and upcharging the material costs because those things are rising. I just recently heard about that. What do the supply chain issues look like in Texas right now?
Well, so, that topic comes up every time we meet with any kind of real estate developer, home builder, et cetera. And it's not just a supply chain issue from a materials cost standpoint, but also just a labor cost standpoint. And so that kind of leads me into the second topic I wanted to talk about. I saw this article this week, which I thought was a really interesting partnership between an Austin-based company called Icon Construction Technologies and the Miami-based home builder Lennar, who I'm sure you're very familiar with. But they are building what is called the world's first, the world's largest 3D printed home community. So this is going to be a 100 home community in Austin that's going to be 3D printed. And so that concept just kind of blows my mind in itself. And the article didn't give a whole lot of details. Icon said they can build homes up to 3,000 square feet using this process. And the printer itself that builds these 10 to 12 foot walls is 15 feet high. So one, I'd just like to go down and see this thing operate. But I'm also curious, what does this mean from an insurance recovery standpoint when you're talking about 3D printed walls?
No, so I hit on, I mean, think about that, like printing a house. Like it's, and I mean, if you're on social media, you may have seen videos of them doing this. And I know that Brazil was supposed to build thousands of these, and there was some controversy over that. I mean, just to see, 100 homes built with the machine, right? And growing up in construction and having a development firm, GlobalPro Ventures, we do development work, thinking about the capabilities of doing that. But Rob, to your question, right, it's like if we talked about the shortcomings of cost databases and how it's tough for them to update after a major storm, and certainly they're not keeping pace right now with the changes in the economy. Without a doubt, as you mentioned, these property management companies are talking about it, which is they're talking about here in Florida, they're talking about there, we're talking to the people in New York, New Jersey area. Everyone's talking about how they're recovering money and then they turn around to go pay, and it's so much more. So you got to keep that in mind. I mean, how do you insure a 3D printed building and value it with consideration for recovery if there was a loss? And I say that because right now, I can tell you that if you go into your big software, estimating software that they use for adjusting, and you look for line items related to 3D printing, you're not going to find anything. And if you find something that you may think is related, it's probably unrelated in some regard to walls and foundations and structure for a building, which you can insure for collapse and some of those things like that, and sinkholes and et cetera, et cetera. So some of it, foundations particularly are typically excluded, but the walls, right, the structure, the roof, some of the other things that they're talking about that will be 3D printed. I mean, I'm curious, right? They start building today. They value the property as they normally would using, Marshall Swift, there's one of these other types of standards. You have a loss, you typically use some other cost database, which is a whole other topic for another time. And that cost database is most likely not going to have line items in there for 3D printed homes. Okay, so all right, well, if that's the case, what kind of insurance are you selling me in my house then? And I don't really think there's an answer to it right now. I hope Lennar and its partnership with this company, Icon, are thinking about those things, or potentially maybe even branding their own product. Who knows? I mean, it's a really interesting topic. And Austin in itself is going through major expansion, right, Rob?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's become a technology hub. I mean, you saw that Tesla is moving their corporate headquarters there. I mean, Austin is becoming one of the technology hubs, which I know Miami has done a lot of work in that space as well and has really been able to recruit tech companies. But, I think that's part of, and you touched on at the beginning of the broadcast, just kind of the exodus of companies out of California and into states like Florida and Texas. The article came out this morning that California transplants are the #1 driver of population growth in Texas.
Wow. I mean, it's just interesting stuff. And Rob, it's been awesome to have you on today. Quick little market update. I mean, really important topics. And these are, we're talking to property management companies that are talking about this issue. So it is impacting people. And I don't think that the insurance industry is really giving this enough consideration when you're having your loss and damage. I can tell you that, having spoken with our claims team and working with them about loss and damage and ongoing negotiations right now, on evaluations of claims that we wrote 6 months, a year ago, that right now we're in conversations on millions of dollars worth of claims, and suddenly the claims could, depending on the material, product, or labor, could be many multiples more than that. Rob, again, thanks so much for coming on this morning to join me for a market update, but you'll be back every single week for the next 5 weeks. This is the 6th week, so we'll add 5 more weeks onto this and keep doing this through the end of the year. I will be joining you next week in Texas. We'll be doing the broadcast from Texas again. I can't wait to join you there.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that was a great conversation with Rob, our president of GlobalPro in Texas, about some of the things that he's seeing there. But these are national issues. in a lot of regards. So it's really important that you continue to tune in, hit the subscribe button, like us and follow us on all the social media platforms. We want to provide you and deliver to you insurance news and business news and information that you can actually use. That's what this is all about. Go ahead, check us out online as well as getglobalpro.com. If you click the resource section, you're going to see all kinds of information in there. I'm talking about checklists for claims. I'm talking about prior recordings and videos from the recovery report, testimonials from our clientele, downloadable forms and information that you can use to help you and your business community association prepare for the placement of insurance or recover from loss. Hey, but it's so easy to get a hold of us, 855-487-7475. Our team is available to you 24/7. Our coverage experts can provide you answers to your questions as it relates to insurance. And we hope you join us next week on the Recovery Report Live. And as you just heard, I will be in Dallas, Texas, sitting alongside Rob to talk about more important issues that are impacting not only the Texas market as well as Florida, but the entire country and abroad as things continue to evolve and change in this new economy. I mean, we're talking about forecasting in the next year. I can't wait to get there. So we'll see you next week on the Recovery Report Live.